The committee will come to order. We all interact with the government throughout our lives, whether it's applying for a small business loan, receiving financial aid to pursue an education, assessing essential health care, or applying for Social Security. Our citizens turn to the government for all sorts of critical services. As elected officials, we must ensure that agencies provide those services as effectively as possible, and AI can help succeed in doing that work. This technology has the potential to make government services more efficient, effective, and accessible for all Americans. For instance, AI can easily translate crucial documents into multiple languages. It can operate 24/7 chatbots that provide our citizens with interactive assistance. And it can allow employees to tackle more requests in less time with greater accuracy. AI can make complex processes easier to navigate. The government's use of AI to deliver services is certainly not new. 3 decades ago, the U.S. Postal Service used it to create faster mail delivery services. And today, in my home state of Michigan, AI tools are providing translation services for citizens applying for permits and for licenses. This technology is already making a difference in the lives of countless American civilians. But this is a watershed moment for AI. These technologies grow more advanced nearly every day, reaching more and more aspects of American life. And that's why, in just the last year, I've convened 5 hearings on artificial intelligence. And we've passed legislation out of this committee to address the challenges as well as the opportunities posed by AI. This builds on my previous legislation to provide educational opportunities on AI, establish adequate training resources, and provide agencies with guidance on how to implement AI tools most effectively. This Congress, our committee has passed my bipartisan Improving Government Services Act to encourage federal agencies to adopt proven customer service tools to help ensure Americans get the assistance that they need. This bill builds upon the hearing we convened last Congress to explore ways agencies can build trust by improving the customer experience. This is a key moment to understand the capabilities of AI and how it can benefit both government employees and the citizens that they serve, and under what circumstances. This hearing will help us do just that. We will examine the ways that AI can help deliver critical services and improve the public's experience in receiving them. We will outline the guardrails that this technology requires, the training resources, privacy standards, and performance metrics we need to properly implement AI tools. And our expert panel of witnesses will help us understand how this can happen at all levels of government. We have a responsibility to do everything we can to ensure government provides the most effective and efficient government services. Succeeding in that work will help our constituents, it will improve trust in government, and strengthen our democratic institutions. This hearing is an opportunity to examine how artificial intelligence can achieve that mission. It is the practice of the committee to swear in witnesses, so if each of you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony that you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated. Our first witness is Jennifer Pahlka, and she is a renowned author and expert on public digital services. She has served in a range of roles across all levels of government, including the U.S. Deputy Chief Technology Officer. And during her time in government, she helped found the United States Digital Service, fix healthcare.gov, and improve the functionality of California's unemployment insurance program. Prior to her public service, Ms. Pahlka founded Code for America, a nonprofit working to enhance government services through digital tools. She is also author of Recording America, which was named as one of NPR's best books of 2023 and made President Obama's AI reading list. Congratulations on that. Ms. Pahlka, you are recognized for your opening comments.
Thank you so much, Chair Peters and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today. My message today is simple. A powerful body like the U.S. Senate has many tools at its disposal to shape the future of the country. Those tools can be used to create mandates and controls on the institutions that deliver for the American people, or they can be used to enable these institutions to use their judgment in the service of agreed-upon goals. A mandate and control framework will add rules and processes. An enablement framework will focus on building capacity, both by strengthening the workforce and reducing the burdens on everyone in it. This critical AI moment calls for enablement. The recent executive order on AI already provides some new controls and safeguards. The order strikes a reasonable balance between encouragement and caution, but I worry that some of its guidance will be applied inappropriately. For example, some government agencies have long been using AI for day-to-day functions like handwriting recognition on envelopes, and agencies may now subject these benign, low-risk uses to red tape. Caution is merited in some places and dangerous in others, where we risk moving backward, not forward. Moreover, in many areas of government service delivery, the status quo is frankly not worth protecting. We understandably want to make sure, for instance, that applicants for government benefits aren't unfairly denied because of bias in algorithms. The reality is that, to take just one benefit, 1 in 6 determinations of eligibility for SNAP is substantially incorrect today. If you count procedural errors, the rate is 44%. Worse are the applications and adjudications that haven't been decided at all, the ones sitting in backlogs, causing enormous distress to the public and wasting taxpayer dollars. Poor application of AI in these contexts could indeed make a bad situation worse, but for people who are fed up and just want someone to get back to them about their tax return, their unemployment insurance check, or even their company's permit to build infrastructure, something has to change. We can't double down on the remedies that failed in the internet age and hope that somehow work out in the age of AI. We must finally commit to the hard work of building digital capacity. OPM and the White House have stated their intentions to build that capacity by hiring tech talent. This is a case where strengthening the workforce is also a matter of reducing burdens. OPM's recent memo, for instance, will grant direct hire authority for several AI-related job classifications, and that will remove a bit of the red tape agencies need to bring on experts. But that direct hire authority does not allow for the use of pooled hiring across agencies, despite the fact that pooled hiring has gotten us many excellent data scientists and other tech roles much more quickly. Agencies will have to run separate hiring processes for each open position, which will take enormous amounts of time and paperwork, even with the direct hire authority. Congress should ask OPM what authorities they need in order to change this, and what resources they need to scale programs like this highly successful SMEQA program, Subject Matter Expertise Qualifying Assessments. Then ask what is the next obstacle that they need removed. I don't presume to know everything that is needed, only that they operate in a highly constrained environment no longer fit to the purpose it must serve. We must reduce burdens in other areas as well. What the public wants from customer service is answers. Where is my check? Why did I get this IRS notice? If we use AI to make it easier to talk to government, but not to get those answers, we fail. The key reason those answers are hard to come by is the enormous complexity of government programs. I worked on the pandemic unemployment insurance crisis and encountered what is close to 10,000 pages of regulation governing what should be a relatively simple program. A claims processor working with my colleague kept calling himself the new guy because he was still learning the ropes. He had been with the agency for 17 years. Recall that unemployment insurance dates back to the 1935 Social Security Act. We've been adding rule upon rule and mandate upon mandate for close to 90 years now. we almost never remove them. It's no wonder the program is still in peril. It's collapsing under its own weight that federal and state agencies can't shed on their own. It's tempting to say that AI will help us by understanding those 90 years of accumulated policy cruft for us. This is appealing in the short term, but dangerous in the long run. We can't have a government so complex that one algorithm talks to the other at such a level of complexity that humans are out of the loop. But we can and should use AI to suggest dramatic simplifications to those overwrought frameworks and make those new, leaner frameworks the law of the land. The greatest gift this body could give to the agencies and the American public they serve is a massive, thorough decluttering. AI makes it possible, but only the people in this chamber can make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pahlka, for your testimony. Our next witness is Dr. Beth Blauer, currently serves as Associate Vice Provost for the Public Sector Innovation at Johns Hopkins University. In 2015, she founded the Bloomberg Center for Government Excellence at Johns Hopkins to help governments use data effectively to improve the lives of people across the United States and around the world. Since then, GovX has worked alongside thousands of public officials, and Ms. Blauer has become a leading expert on the use of innovative technology in government services. Ms. Blauer, you are recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Peters, committee members, thank you for inviting me to participate in today's hearing. It is an absolute honor to share my views on AI, which reflect my personal and professional expertise and are not necessarily a position of Johns Hopkins University or medicine. I come to this committee with more than 20 years of public sector experience. My first job in government was as a juvenile probation officer, and I ended service more than a decade later as the de facto chief operating officer of the state of Maryland, where I had the opportunity to oversee about 85% of the state's budget and a comparable amount of the workforce through an innovative, data-driven program called StateStat. Together with leaders across our state, we used data to create better outcomes for all Marylanders, leading to stronger schools, safer communities, a healthier Chesapeake Bay, and a strong economic outlook. All accomplished by maintaining fidelity to a robust data practice and evidence-based decision-making implemented across the whole of government. In 2015, I founded the Bloomberg Center for Government Excellence at Johns Hopkins University with a simple yet ambitious goal: to help government, primarily cities, use data effectively to improve the lives of residents across the United States and around the globe. Over the past 8 years, GovX has established itself as a global leader, working alongside thousands of public officials to achieve our goal. We are the go-to resource for governments as they seek to improve data proficiency and develop data-driven policy solutions drawing on the most cutting-edge technology, including AI and advanced analytics. Technology progress can present unique challenges in the public sector, but where some see barriers, we see opportunity. An effective AI approach relies on investment in core data practices. When public institutions attempt to dive into the deep end of analytics, automation, or machine learning without first building a strong data practice, they run the risk of propagating disparate impacts, poorly informing decisions, and creating bad outcomes. When done right, a strong data practice will lead to safer AI implementation that will anticipate resident need and promote safer, more efficient, healthier, thriving communities. We've learned from our work with cities that there is already a strong body of evidence that AI in local government can improve lives. For example, cities are using AI to reduce traffic congestion and manage fleet, ensuring prompt service delivery and saving money. AI also has the potential to predict the needs of residents before it's too late, by identifying households that are experiencing the early onset of economic distress. Early detection allows public agencies to provide immediate interventions that reduce barriers to aid and expedite connecting the right services to those in need. For example, cities have used AI to predict which residents are at risk of becoming homeless by analyzing utility and property violation data. This analysis has led to public interventions coming sooner, keeping families in their homes, and saving public resources. When local leaders ask us how to get started, this is what we suggest. Number one, designate a senior leader. This should be a trusted partner who knows when to deploy AI and when not to. Someone who can influence service design and someone with the power and authority to lead governance and technical strategy while asking the right questions. Number two, Share early guidance. Be transparent about when AI is deployed. Assess the risks. Take precautions to avoid bias in delivery. Communicate an acceptable use policy, and bring people to the table to discuss. Number 3, you already are investing in technology that incorporates AI. Explore what you already have. Many technology platforms are already doing this important integration, and big and expensive investments should not be your first move. Number 4, create space for experimentation. Integrate a review of your AI implementation into ongoing performance routines. Be clear before implementation about what success looks like. Track progress and give your team the right balance of space and support. We are learning as we go. An iterative stance with reflection and learning periods baked into the process creates fertile ground for cautious experimentation. At the same time, some organizations may not be ready to implement AI. For example, some municipalities may learn that they need to get their data houses in order before they can use data for predictive modeling. Some may realize they don't have sufficient expertise on staff and need to hire. Others may find that their policies prevent AI implementation and they need to address that first. In order to maximize the use of AI in public organizations, government must invest in the capacity for technology adoption across all levels and program areas. This means that we need to attract new skills to the sector. We need to elevate the capacity of the current workforce, and we need to start investing in the creation of public space to experiment with the new AI-powered technologies. But there are positive signs on the horizon. I would like to thank Chairman Peters and the senators of both parties on this committee for your leadership on this important issue, as demonstrated by the introduction of the Bipartisan Improving Government Service Act. This important piece of legislation would require agencies to develop, implement, and submit to Congress a written comprehensive customer experience strategy that includes the adoption of some of these best practices from the private sector and long-term planning for customer service modernization. This is exactly the type of jumpstart and focus on the basics that will greatly benefit the American people. Thank you for your time today, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Blauer. Our final witness is Dr. Beth Noveck. Yesterday, Governor Murphy appointed Dr. Noveck as the first chief AI strategist of New Jersey, where she also currently serves as the state's first chief innovation officer. Prior to that post, she served as the founding U.S. Deputy Chief Technology Officer and head of the White House Open Government Initiative under President Obama. Outside of her dedicated public service, Dr. Noveck works as a professor of experimental AI at Northeastern University, where she directs the Burns Center for Social Change, as well as its partner project, the Governance Lab. For the last 20 years, Dr. Noveck has designed and built public tools to improve governance and strengthen our democracy. Dr. Noveck, you are now recognized for your opening comments.
Thank you, Chair Peter, and thank you so much for this opportunity to appear before the committee, especially in the company of such a distinguished panel. So despite having funded the creation of the internet, the public sector, we can all agree, I think, has really lagged in its adoption. But now I think government can lead in the use of artificial intelligence for public good. Because especially of the power of AI to sort, to organize, and to summarize vast amounts of data and text, AI has the potential to make government more effective, more efficient, and more responsive to residents. AI is already helping us to create what I would call a more conversational government, where we can supply information and benefits and services, as you alluded to, 24/7. In New Jersey, we're using AI-enabled chatbots to answer resident questions via the web. We also support our call centers with AI, which helps staff quickly write menu options and answers to questions in response to public demand. That means the public is getting accurate answers faster, and that allows our call center operators to increase the resolution of calls now by 50% by human operators. We're able to create now a more accessible government as well, with AI-driven translation and summarization. So my wonderful students at Northeastern University in the AI for Impact Co-op program, where students are doing a 6-month full-time paid internship working for governments on AI projects. Students, for example, have been working with the California nonprofit Innovate Public Schools to help families of school children with disabilities translate and summarize the child's individualized education program. So for most families, that's a 50 to 100-page PDF of inscrutable legalese and government speak. And students in this, as we call it, AIEP project team worked with a network of parents now to design a tool that enables families to upload their IEP and then securely and privately ask questions of the document, such as, what are the accommodations to which my child is entitled? Because generative AI makes it so much faster to write code, students built a fully functional product in just one semester. AI is also helping us to support public workers in their effort to do a better job serving residents. So in New Jersey, our innovation team engineers have integrated AI co-pilot tools. That is to say, tools that suggest to them which line of code to write next, and that's enabling us to write code 55% faster, creating a wide array of digital benefits much, much faster than we were able to do before. Governments are also using AI to process data, as we've heard, more efficiently. So in New Jersey, where we design government operations with residents rather than for them, we actively invite citizen comment. That is to say, we often receive thousands of comment, for example, from unemployment claimants, telling us what their questions are, what they would like to see next, what information they need. And then AI can help us parse those comments in a way that we couldn't do with the current staff that we have. We can then, based on that understanding, put front and center the information that people want. And as a result of which, over the last year, we've brought down the time it takes to apply for unemployment benefits by 48 minutes per application. Governments are also turning to AI to improve how we do public engagement more broadly. I'm working now with the Museum of Science to run a national consultation to understand why it is, shockingly, that only 33% of fourth graders were proficient readers last year. The free and open source tool PolicySynth that we designed together with the nonprofit Citizens Foundation automated the creations of thousands of research questions, allowing us to synthesize then 150 root causes of the problem of illiteracy. And now at unlockingliteracy.ai, we're asking parents and students and educators around the country, what do they think is the real cause of the problem, and to tell us how we can do things better. To realize this vision of AI-enabled public administration, where residents don't have to wait on hold, don't have to go to a government office, and don't have to, frankly, go from website to website searching for the information they need, let me just end with a couple of recommendations. I have a much longer list in my written submission. You can support federal efforts to implement AI systems to provide this kind of round-the-clock information services about policies, about benefits, about services, again, 24/7 and in multiple languages. We need to employ AI for more robust public engagement, first to improve services. We can turn to AI to help us synthesize comments in a human-centered design process. And I would add, we can also engage the public using AI to talk about how we're using AI and how we're governing the use of AI in agencies. We need to intensify efforts to open government data, ensuring that it's in machine-readable formats, to facilitate the training of better AI models, and frankly, to build and grow the American AI industry. Finally, we need to build on the success of the AI Leadership Training Act that came out of this committee by implementing free, accessible training, not just for leadership, but for all federal employees, going beyond senior officials, focusing not just on knowledge of what AI is, but on practical applications in government services, ensuring that we collect data and evaluate impact about how such upskilling translates into better public service efficiency and better innovation. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Noveck. Ms. Pahlka. Numerous surveys suggest that satisfaction with government services is a lot lower than it is in the private sector.
Yes.
So my question for you is, what's your assessment of the state of government service delivery today, and what should we be striving for?
It is lower, but it is getting better. I think what we need to recognize is that now it must get better faster. It has to get better faster in part because the gap between public and private sector is about to widen as private sector actors adopt AI, and also because AI is going to complicate the landscape within federal agencies, and so there's just a need to step up. I think the way to get it better is both to support a lot of current efforts that are already underway, My colleagues have mentioned several of them, and there's a great foundation to build on. But also to look at new tactics, like policy simplification, which I mentioned in my opening statement. The goal is a good question. I think many people will say that we need to be on par with the private sector. There are, of course, differences between the public sector and the private sector. I think the way I would put it is that the level of service needs to recognize what's at stake for the citizen. Very often, when you are engaging with the private sector, you're getting your cable bill or getting a car, it may be critical to you in that moment, but it's nowhere near as critical if you're doing something like managing expecting a tax return check or, getting your unemployment insurance, when that may be really life-changing for you. So the level of service should be appropriate to how critical it is to the human on the other end.
Very good, thank you. This next question is going to be actually to all three witnesses. And Ms. Blauer, I'll start with you, and then we'll work down the dais. This Congress, I introduced the Improving Government Services Act to encourage agencies to improve customer service and also reduce backlogs, which some have tremendous backlogs, unfortunately. My question, though, for each of you is that how can AI help agencies provide quality outcomes for these key services, but also protect individual privacy, something that we are concerned about and hear from constituents all the time related to their concerns. So, Ms. Blauer, what are your suggestions?
Thank you so much for the question. I think that I'm going to take the question in two parts. The first one is, how do we make sure that AI actually aligns to the outcomes that we want to see? And that requires leadership. We need leaders who can articulate goals for customer service that can create those expectations for what customers should expect in interactions with the government. And we should make sure that we build the habits within our government to measure whether or not we're hitting those goals. So we need to make sure that if we've set a standard, that we're holding to that standard. And then the way that we think about AI and the way that we protect individual information is that when we think about this culture of experimentation, AI right now, we're in a research and design phase, and we need to create a ring fence around these opportunities to experiment with the technology that doesn't include utilization of personally identifying information. We can get very far by using data that is de-identified, that is safe, and that will not expose individual level data. And we can do that by thinking really strategically about those frameworks that we set out in the bill, in the way that we think about building out these opportunities for experimentation.
Thank you. Dr. Noveck.
Thank you. So I think that let me also take this in two parts then. The discussion that we've already begun to have and that you've alluded to around using chatbots and the ability to use AI to help answer people's questions 24/7 will help us begin to reduce the backlog. The ability to use AI to help us write better, clearer instructions and directions, again, will help people get customer service faster. The ability for us to use AI to bring information together across agencies, across departments, across those 10,000 regs that you talked about, that ability to now synthesize information, I think, can help us to create this more conversational ethos where we are responding to people's questions and then reducing the need for them to call in, to wait, et cetera. But we also then need to speed up how we do that work, and that's where some of these co-pilot techniques, this ability to use AI to help us write code faster, really comes into play. But I do want to just respond to the second half, and as Beth alluded to already, this ensuring that we are not using, and we don't need to in most cases, use PII, your personally identifiable information or sensitive information, and how we do this, I think is really crucial. It's one of the guidelines that we have put out in our policy in New Jersey as we've embraced and encouraged people to responsibly use AI in order to improve customer service, but we've said be very careful, don't type personally identifiable information into these tools, not that of residents, not that of yourselves, in order to ensure that we are protecting privacy, even at the same time as we're improving customer service.
Thank you. Ms. Pahlka?
Wise words from my co-witnesses here. I support everything that they just said, and simply add that I guess from the perspective of the Hill, pair mandates and directives with enablement. In other words, Agencies want to do these things. They want to improve government service delivery. And there are many things that often stand in their way, make them take a long time to do things, jump through a lot of hoops. And as you say, as you direct them to take these actions, also ask them, what can we remove to make this easier?
Thank you. Senator Carper, you're recognized for your questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. To our witnesses, welcome. Is it Pahlka?
Yes.
Pahlka, right. Noveck and Blauer. Those were my only questions.
That was
Not really. I think everybody in this committee's been fortunate to hold a whole lot of different jobs in our lives. I think of myself as a servant. And as governor of Delaware and Maggie was governor of her state as well. We got several governors on this panel. But we focused a whole lot on customer service, I remember right out of the Navy, moved to Delaware from California and went to go to the DMV in Wilmington, Delaware to get my Volkswagen Carmen Ghia with a rebuilt engine through inspection. And it took forever to find the place. And when we got there, I was just convinced that the people who worked there hated me and everybody else who showed up for an inspection. And I said, boy, wouldn't it be great to have a chance to fix that someday and change that. Today, when people go into a DMV in Delaware, the first thing they see is customer service. How can I help you? And it used to be people hated the Division of Revenue, which is like our IRS in Delaware. And we had a lousy reputation for service. And last year, as governor, the folks at the Division of Revenue won the Customer Service Award for best service of any nonprofit or business entity in the state of Delaware. And we didn't have AI then. Imagine how good we could be if we had AI then. AI could be a good thing, a real good thing, or it could be a real bad thing. And I'm excited about this hearing today to hear what the upside might be. When Chuck Schumer, our leader, told us a couple of months ago we're going to have a series of briefings on AI, I said to my colleagues, I said, I could barely spell AI. And several of them said to me later, could you barely spell AI as well? But I think I've almost got it down, at least the spelling. And now to find out how can we harness this to provide better service. We have only 3 counties in Delaware. We've got 1 million people. We have county directors in each county. We have folks who do constituent service in each of our 3 county offices. And we measure every month. We send out a customer satisfaction survey for the people that we have served through our county offices. And people can evaluate our service excellent, good, fair, or poor. Excellent, good, fair, or poor. We do this every month. And for 22 years, we're running, let's see, 96% excellent or good. 96% excellent or good. About 3% fair, 1% poor. And if folks evaluate us and they come back and say that we were fair or poor, our service was fair or poor, we call them. We call them and say, how could we do it better? And none of them have mentioned AI to us yet in terms of doing better. But I just lay that down as a predicate. This is an important part of our jobs. Folks think about what we do about here is we pass budgets and we deal with important international issues. We also focus on a good customer service, and this may be a way that we can provide even better service. Question, Ms. Pahlka? Ms. Blauer? Now that I have your name straight, what can federal agencies do with the current tools at their disposal to deploy AI technology more efficiently in order to meet the evolving needs of the people we serve? And how will this improve the public's perception and satisfaction, their public's perception and satisfaction of government services? Ms. Pahlka.
I just want to honor your focus on AI. I'm focused on customer service in the state of Delaware. I think that does so much to contribute to people's trust and faith in government and in democracy. So thank you for sharing that.
You bet.
And I think what you said about the successes in customer service without AI actually speak to something that each of us are trying to say, which is it is really about the foundation and the basics. Ms. Blauer mentioned leadership. Dr. Noveck mentioned the infrastructure. we're not necessarily going to succeed or fail because of AI. We're going to succeed or fail because we have the right foundation to build on. And we don't quite yet have that entire foundation. We need to keep building it. We need to build it faster. There are all sorts of things that we should have done in the past decade or two to bring customer service from the federal government into the internet age and meet the expectations of the American public as they've been able to use services that just become much more convenient for them. You don't have to go stand in line anymore to deposit a check. You use your phone to do it. And so expectations are risen, and we have to meet those rising expectations. Those things that we should have done to move us effectively into the internet era really they're unfinished business. We still have to do them. We now have to do them quite quickly so that we can, be set up to be a great customer service organization in the age of AI. Those things that are basic have to do with our human capital strategy. They have to do with procurement. They have to do with the kind of leadership that Ms. Blauer talked about. So I think we agree, and I very much appreciate your comments and your perspective.
Thank you. Ms. Blauer, same question if you would just follow up. Thank you. I saw you nodding your head as Ms. Pahlka was speaking.
Yes, thank you for your very thoughtful question. And as someone who would always measure whether or not what we were doing was effective in the state of Maryland by looking at what was being said about the MVA on Twitter, I can say with great authority that it was also a very big measure for us as to whether or not the residents of our state were having their needs met. I think the most effective implementation of AI is actually not felt at all by the public. It is working in the background to optimize an experience that's led with the good people that are helping usher in people through a process, that are connecting people to services that they're trying to access, that are actually freed from a lot of the sort of bureaucratic processes that have been labored by regulations, by frameworks, by some artificial inflation of bureaucratic processes. When we can skim those processes down and free up the public sector workforce to actually focus on creating those meaningful service delivery opportunities, that's when we're going to see the kind of combination of the power of AI and the ability for us to provide very responsible and very satisfying customer experiences. I think the most frustrating implementations that I've seen to date have been where we're leading with a new chatbot or a new interface that's hard, that is difficult for people to navigate or to connect with, and where they feel even further distance between themselves and the work that the government is doing. And so we have to think really strategically about how we achieve both of those ends by focusing on what is that experience, what do we want that experience to feel like in the moment, and then how can we relieve those frontline workers of some of those bureaucratic processes so that they can focus on that experience and let the AI work in the background to optimize it.
Great. Thank you both for your responses. Mr. Chairman, thanks for holding this, hearing this is important stuff.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Senator Hassan, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here, not only for your testimony, but for the work that you do. And my questions are really going to be follow-ons or expansions of I think the questions you've heard, because there's a common focus among all of us about how we can maximize the potential of AI, but also protect the things that people care about in their interactions with government in the process. So, Ms. Pahlka, I'll start with you. In your testimony, you discussed how the federal government needs to build capacity and competency to deploy AI in a way that meets the diverse needs of each agency and improves service delivery. So I'm interested in a little bit more of the specifics. What specific ways can agency leadership foster greater technological capacity and competency to deploy AI while balancing each agency's ultimate mission? And in particular, what can we do to develop AI competent workforces?
That is such a great question, and thank you for asking it. I think that there are things that agencies need to do, and I think there's also things that the center of government needs to do to support them in doing it. If you go into any agency today and you ask who is actually doing the customer service, who is doing the delivery, who is, say, creating the website that people are using, and I'm sort of speaking in an internet era answer right now rather than the AI answer. it's pretty much all contracted out, and the number of people in an agency who have a real pulse on the actual mechanisms of delivery is very, very small. So you can go in and say, okay, you know, there's so many teams I know right now who are doing really incredible work where they're building interfaces to government online, for instance, that really work for people, and they're struggling. So you go in and say, great, this is amazing work, what do you need? And they say, well, we're a team of 3. How many other people are working on this? 300, 3,000, what are they doing? They're writing reports, they're doing various kinds of compliance. But we really need to go look at who are the people doing this work? Do we have enough of them who have the right competencies and capacities? That's why part of what I mean by a human capital strategy. There's a huge relook that we have to do on who we hire and in what capacity in government, and really, really change things to be more oriented towards the capacities and competencies of delivery. Then we also need to be able to hire those people. So I mentioned in my written testimony that it just takes too long to hire people today. And you know, how to make that a shorter process is a very complicated question. You see good movement around that right now with things like direct hire authority for agencies for AI-enabled positions. Of course, it's much more than just experts in AI, right? It's all of the people who do the data, for instance, or you know, a wide range of AI-enabling positions. But we need to further ask, how can we speed the hiring of those positions? I now know literally hundreds of people from the private sector with exactly the competencies, capacities, and values that we want, who want to come into government. These are the people we need. And they're really interested in a way that they weren't as interested 10 years ago. But they're languishing in 9-month processes, and then we're losing them. So let's just, you know, look at who we need to hire and then figure out how to hire them quickly.
Okay, thank you. I think we could talk about this a great deal more, but I have a question for each of the other witnesses that I want to get to. To Dr. Noveck, we know that the public expects better digital customer service from their government. However, many Americans, including retirees, older individuals on Medicare or Social Security, veterans, or those who have just complex cases, actually need to speak to a customer service representative to address these issues. The whole panel has touched on this a little, but what are some of the ways that AI could supplement or complement the work of federal customer service representatives so that they can focus on the people who actually need the human one-on-one case management or solving?
I think it's a great question, and that's why in New Jersey we are really using AI to support our call center workforce. We're not looking to offload people to phone trees and to put you in an endless loop of pushing buttons. Right. Quite the opposite. What we want to do is, by listening to residents and understanding what it is that they need to know and want to know. So looking at what they're searching for on the web, what are the questions that they're asking they call in, then we can put that information front and center, first of all. Second of all, we can provide good responses to people on the web, and that's going to offload some of the easy questions such that they're not passing through to humans. So if we can get rid of your simple question about, you know, when is this open or closed, or which form do I use, et cetera, and we're putting that front and center, that means that fewer people are needing to actually talk to a person. And as a result, so for example, on just one service, by reducing by 15% the number of queries coming through, we've increased by 50% the number of people that we're then able to serve with that phone service. Wow. But also for more vulnerable residents, whether they are non-native English speakers, whether they are elderly, et cetera, the more that we design things in a human-centered way, that is talking to and listening to residents about what do they need and what do they want, the more we can then take advantage of AI to do things like provide multilingual services, or, for example, translate language, complex government speak and legalese, into something at a 9th grade level, right, or in simple terms. So listening to residents, using the data we have from what they tell us to then improve what we're putting forward, then means we're putting fewer things through to the call center and having more responsive, more human, and more conversational interactions.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that. And to Ms. Blauer, one of the main benefits of AI is that it can make sense of vast amounts of data. So in terms of customer service, and you've touched on this a little bit, but this could help connect disparate pieces of information from all across the government to streamline benefit applications or answer regulatory compliance questions. However, we can't use AI to make these connections without adequate data sharing policies or data sharing infrastructure. We've talked a little bit about the privacy issues, which are real, but what are the main barriers that prevent data sharing across the government?
Thank you so much for this question. It's one that I spend a lot of time focused on. And we have replicated the silos of government in the systems where data lives in government. And so one of the actual promises and opportunities that AI presents is that it's making it much easier to actually link data sets together. Data sets that don't have the same types of metadata that connect them. So we may identify addresses differently in one platform. We may identify the name format differently in another. And what the metadata, when you work at that level, you can start to link those data sets together. And AI is actually very powerful in helping us do something that used to take sometimes years to do, which is to link data and to allow you to do that analysis. So that's one of the things that I'm very excited about. But interagency data sharing agreements are critical. We need to clear the way for data to be able to be shared, not just across agencies within the federal government, but also between the federal government, the state governments, and city governments. Right. We need we need intergovernmental data sharing agreements that will free up our abilities to have data move through these complex webs of systems so that we can actually design the most impactful services. And right now, that does not exist.
And I will just note, and I'm over time and I note that, but as we talk about this capacity of data sharing, we also, to your previous answers, know that there are ways we can do that while protecting people's privacy, because obviously my constituents, I'm sure all of our constituents, care a great deal about their sensitive personal information and their privacy, but there are ways in these interagency agreements and in the look at the metadata to protect privacy too, right?
Absolutely. And it is one of the best ways for us to protect privacy is to have these structures built around it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hessen. Ms. Pahlka, your testimony mentions that our current federal procurement framework is simply too rigid and that it prevents us from timely obtaining some technological capabilities like AI as well as cloud computing. This issue is actually a major priority for this committee, and we're in the process of looking at some reforms to the procurement process going forward. So my question for you is how can we change the framework to better obtain and use these essential capabilities like AI and cloud computing and any of the other types of reforms that you think are essential for us to consider?
Thank you so much for bringing up procurement. I know there are a bunch of procurement nerds listening who will be very excited that this topic is being spoken of in this chamber. There are a bunch of procurement nerds because it is such a complex issue. The federal acquisition regulation is, as you well know, 2,400 pages. And the number of things that could be done to it to make it easier for contracting officers and people in charge of delivery in government are numerous. I think in the time that we have today, what I would say is it's got to be simpler. Anytime something has that many different provisions, you're going to have people fighting over interpretations of things. You're going to have people saying, we can't use this, we have to apply this particular provision of it. And ultimately, if it's a little bit simpler, I think people will be able to get the outcomes that they desire from a particular procurement in more quickly. And I think speed and flexibility are the two things that you should be designing for if you think about any kind of procurement reform. There's a lot else, I think, to talk about there, but ultimately, I think what you want to end up with something that's not 2,400 pages. And the great thing about this particular moment in time is that it's very hard to understand what those 2,400 pages actually mean. Now, there are many people in government who really do know it backwards and forwards, But AI can actually help us suggest some simplifications to that. So it's it is part of the opportunity of this particular moment.
Thank you. Dr. Noveck and Ms. Pahlka, we're going to ask both of you to respond to this question. Competition is absolutely critical to ensuring that the federal government uses the latest technology and gets good value for its purchases as well. So my question to you is, what are some of the measures that we can take in federal procurement to promote competition with these advanced technologies? Dr. Noveck, I'll start with you, and then Ms. Pahlka.
I think Ms. Pahlka has already begun to touch on this question, the need for greater simplicity and greater streamlining to enable smaller vendors to be able to compete in this space. One needs to not simply have mastered the GSA schedules to be able to, should not be the sole threshold to being able to do business with the federal government. So streamlining and simplicity is going to be incredibly, incredibly important in this space if we're going to enable smaller people to compete. I think, and GSA has been making strides on this with their wonderful guide on agile procurement that they've put out, also really trying to push forward what is known as agile procurement. That is to say, not trying to anticipate every single requirement that we're going to have 5 years ahead of time in advance. These technologies are so new, our uses and experiences with them are so new, and designing tools correctly means actually doing it in little increments, testing what's working and improving. So the more that we are streamlining by going smaller in the scope, being more agile, and ensuring that we are actually then refining as we go, I think the more that we're going to both open things up to procurement, but also ensure that the tools that we are procuring translate into better services and better customer experience. Where we make the mistake is that, again, I'm going to anticipate everything that we need 5, 10 years down the road, again, on technologies that are changing now really by the day, if not by the week, and there are new capabilities emerging all the time. We can use, again, AI to help us in conceptualizing and drafting some of those requirements, but we need to be able to make more agile procurement the norm rather than the exception.
Thank you. Ms. Pahlka.
I think Dr. Noveck said 90% of it, so if I can just plus 1,000 that, all I would add to it is there is some controversy over the notion of open source AI. I think in the kinds of contexts we're talking about, the dangers are much less, and the benefits can be pretty big. AI could have the effect of real consolidation of power because it's so hard to create these models. I mean, the investment that OpenAI put into ChatGPT is I don't remember the numbers, but it's staggering. And so they have a lot of power because of that. So the more that we can actually look at models that are more distributed, more democratized, and that's going to mean oftentimes open source, and make sure we can consider those when we're trying to find a solution in government, the more we will be, I think, promoting competition broadly in technology.
Good. Ms. Blauer, this question is for you. We know that a lot of innovation occurs at the local level and state governments, and so my question for you is, how are mayors and local officials approaching the procurement of AI systems in their cities, in their communities, in their states? And maybe give us some specific examples for the record. And then how can we learn from their work specifically? What are some lessons that we should take to heart here?
Thanks so much for the question. And for this one, I think it's important for us to look at local examples because there is some really promising practices, particularly around outcomes-based procurement. AI has the potential to deliver value across a whole host of outcome areas that we really care about. And local governments are leading with outcomes-based procurement. So instead of just scoping what the technology need is, I think it's prudent for us to think about how can we partner with AI developers and with AI platforms to actually achieve some of the most pressing outcomes that we've been trying to crack for generations. So in places like Seattle, where they're using an outcomes-based budgeting model in order to advance how they fund homeless services, or cities have been using outcomes-based procurements in order for them to, instead of having the provision of how you deploy LED light systems across your city system, have the light bulb providers buy into your energy efficiency goals. And outcomes-based procurements have the ability for you to actually scope AI, actually scope technology interventions in a way where you are partnering with the organizations for the actual improved customer experience, for the actual reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, for the actual system safety and preservation outcomes you want to see across your transportation structures. And if we can pivot out of the silo of procurement being totally focused on the technology and get the technologists to partner with you through the procurement vehicles on the outcomes, it will be transformational. We're seeing it in cities, and I think it's absolutely possible also at the federal level.
Wonderful. The next question is going to be for all three of you. I'll start with Dr. Noveck and then Ms. Pahlka, and then Ms. Blauer, you can wrap it up for this question. Studies have indicated that roughly 45% of chief data officers believe that they do not have the responsibilities for AI at their individual agencies. And yet quality data is absolutely key to quality outcomes, as we all three have already discussed and we're well aware of. So my question for you is, how can the federal government ensure that federal chief data officers are involved in the efforts to actually improve the delivery of services with AI? Dr. Noveck.
I think the question suggests the answer, which is ensuring that they do. So as we've all talked about, data is, of course, integral to training AI models. Without data to analyze, the AI becomes fairly useless. What we're trying to do is actually use data to ensure that we're proactively delivering services in the way that Ms. Blauer already talked about. So I think having CDOs at the table is really, really essential, and mandating that their role includes, again, the proactive publication and availability of data, as is already required by law, and ensuring that we do more of that. That's going to require then more training, I think, for chief data officers and for data professionals in government around AI to talk about where those collaborations can occur, and ensuring that agencies do create those cross-functional teams and that cross-agency collaboration, as well as within agencies and then across agencies, to ensure that these new AI officers, data officers, policy people, everywhere that we can bring disparate disciplines together to talk about how we can better serve residents, I think the better job that we're going to do. So I think the question is really vital because it suggests the answer, which is we need the data people to be at the table, and we need to invest in the proactive publication and availability of data is really integral.
Thank you. Ms. Pahlka.
My colleagues at the table here are national experts on this, and I would like to cede my time to Ms. Blauer. Both of these folks have so much experience in this topic.
Great. Ms. Blauer, you have the final say on this question.
All right, thank you to both of you. So I was not a classically trained data person when I became essentially the de facto chief data officer of the state of Maryland. What I was someone who understood what it meant to work in government. I connected to the people of the front lines of government, and I was able to usher in a transformation of data use in government because I could relate to the challenges that the people in the organizations were trying to solve. I knew what it was like to be a probation officer, to sort of sit under the crushing weight of that bureaucracy. So when we think about how we attract CDOs into our government, if we're only hiring technologists into those roles and not people that have the softer skills that can be deferential to subject matter expertise that exists in your government, that can actually connect and translate from the technology to the policy making, to the legislative agenda setting, to the budget making, to all of the things that we know are the levers of government that are going to create change, then we're doing a disservice both to the position of CDO and to government itself. CDOs need to be able to have those rounded expertise so that they can, like I said, connect to the people who are delivering for your government and also to those that are leading change in your government. Where we've seen failures, both at the local and state level, is when we place a CDO in an IT agency and their role is sort of ordained just to be the person that hounds people to move data or to get data expressed for other use. Where we've seen great success is where they are empowered from a leadership level and that they are materially part of the big substantive change that government is embarking on.
Well, thank you. Senator Butler, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Chair Peters, and thank you to all of you for participating. It's so great to see a Californian on the panel. And for that reason, little hometown love, I'd love to sort of start with you, Ms. Pahlka. You know, we are one of the most diverse states in the country, representing 40 million Californians and a vast array of racial diversity, ethnic diversity, and language diversity. And we, given our size and scope, our diversity that makes us such a great state, the challenges of making government work for California residents is a challenge that you've taken on behalf of Governor Newsom and our EDD team. I am curious about the ways in which these technologies can be deployed to further accessibility as well as just getting people what they need on an everyday basis. The pain of getting a driver's license, the pain of getting a passport or getting your call returned. How talk with me a little bit, share with the committee a little bit about how we can embrace all that makes us great, our diversity and all of the things that really make our country the melting pot that it is, and deploy technology in order to make our government, again, more accessible for those whose first language may not be English, and make sure that it works in a way that people can get exactly what they need when they need it.
That is an inspiring question, thank you, and I'm glad that it came from our senator from California. We've mentioned earlier that translation is one of the things AI is fantastic at. So when I worked on the task force for unemployment insurance during the pandemic, translation of the whole process, not just the application form people would use online. Of course, we had a problem with the call center, but if you were able to call, were you able to get through and talk to somebody in the language that you knew so that you could actually get the help you need to get your unemployment insurance check? And of course, we're at a moment in time when there are tools available that could make that a lot easier. I've spoken before about the need to streamline procurement so that tools like that could be procured more easily. I also think it's really important to recognize that when people call, they don't just want to be able to talk to somebody in their language, they actually need an answer. And it's wonderful if someone can pick up the phone, but much better if they can say, your check is coming. And in order to do that, I do think we need to simplify the policies and processes and regulations that cover a program like unemployment insurance. It is staggeringly complex for something that really is not that complicated. We're going to take your pay, your previous pay and some portion of it, and you're going to get that when you're out of work. We've made it into 10,000 pages of regulation. I mentioned how people working at the EDD in California were still learning the ropes after 17 years. So of course it's hard to get an answer under that incredible burden of complexity, and we happen to be at a moment in time when AI could help us reduce that complexity. It can't do the work for us, but it can help us understand what's in those 10,000 pages, suggest simplifications, and then lawmakers could work to make that a program that is a little bit easier to administer. When I worked on unemployment insurance, and I hope this speaks to your question, not just the particular example, but we had a legislature who passed a law right when we were trying to get through that backlog that was designed to help people who didn't speak English. And as much as I'm a fan of the need to do that and feel very connected to the need to serve those folks, it was an example I felt of adding a mandate when what was needed was enablement. So one of the things we could have done at that time to subtract rather than add would have been to remove the requirement that call center agents had to get permission before they could use the translation service that was currently available. And instead, we said, here are new mandates for translation of the website, which distracted, frankly, from the ability of the EDD at that moment in time to work through the backlog. The thing they needed to do the most at that time was get checks to what turned out to be 1.3 million people. And sometimes we need to recognize that we have to have priorities in order to serve people. There were many people in that 1.3 million claims backlog who were underserved, represented the diversity of California, and they actually didn't need at that moment, a different way to read through this web form, which was already so complicated. The language in it was so complicated in English that translating it into another language wasn't going to help. What they needed was their check. And sometimes we need to have better communication between agencies and legislators to understand what is the thing at this moment in time that will enable the right outcome and set some priorities and have the translation stuff come later. I hope the translation stuff does come later, but I also hope we use the tools of AI to do it instead of doing it in the mode that we've been doing it over the past 10 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very responsive to the question and a continued incredible example for California. My last question, I want to just really quickly move from maybe customer service to thinking about help us to think about how to better create the guardrails, enable the tools to also supplement direct services and challenges that we have as a nation. Across the country, there is both a mental health crisis as well as a mental health worker crisis. I was reading, it's Los Angeles being one of the largest mental health providers in the country, that they also have more than 1,800 vacancies in mental health provision. But have been reading a lot, about chatbots that are being able to be deployed to offer initial support where we may not have a worker at the ready to support the kind of one-on-one interaction that's required during mental health counseling and services. Are there, and nationally we have as a at the federal level, a national healthcare worker task force, understanding that we have a shortage around the country and a challenge that we've got to address. Can you talk more, either of you, about the deployment of artificial intelligence, the usage of chatbots in a way to support the existing workers and their work, even as we have these sort of challenges of attracting more and creating more opportunities for workers in the space?
So it's such a wonderful question, and I want to combine it with some of our focus also on government customer service here. I think one of the exciting things about these technologies is that they are what is sometimes referred to now as multimodal. That is to say, they talk as well as they type. So that means we have conversational agents, a tool I'm thinking of like Pi, which was designed by the person who actually created the UK's largest helpline for Muslim youth. Precisely in order to offer that responsiveness, that sense of talking to a person, which can really provide a lot of psychological support for people in the first instance. So we're seeing this ability not only to give people chatbots in the sense of typed responses to questions, whether it's for residents or whether it's for employees, but also spoken responses to questions to provide that added level of customer service. And I think that's hugely important, whether it's in the mental health space, which is outside my area of expertise, or whether it's in the government customer support area. So this ability now to provide people with that kind of responsiveness, I think, is a hugely important, and we're going to see the use of these tools only grow. Of course, we need those guardrails to ensure that we are confident about what the information is that's being provided to people, that we're not taking advantage of people in a vulnerable state. And that's why doing things in a human-centered way, whether that's with residents or whether that's also with government workers and government employees, talking to them about what do they need and what will actually help them is really crucial. And last point here is, what's exciting about a lot of these tools is you can also train them to respond on a specific corpus of information. So it's not the world of ChatGPT and the open web that we know where it might pull from anywhere on the internet, but rather the idea now, for example, that my students are working with Mass DOT to say, let's upload their manuals, their procedures, their policies, and then provide a tool so that new engineers coming into the agency can ask a question like, what's the rule on this or what's the policy about that, and to pull the answers only from those documents. That helps provide an added level of safety and security to be sure that we know what the answers that people are going to get, provides that conversational element, and again, it provides that opportunity, though, to make it much easier than reading 1,000 documents and having to pour through them, enabling those new employees that we're bringing in not to burn out quite so fast, but instead to be excited about the opportunity to do public service.
Thank you, Senator Butler. Dr. Noveck, New Jersey is one of the first states to develop guidance on how employees should use AI. So if you would, for the committee's benefit, kind of describe that guidance, and more importantly, perhaps, how is it actually working in practice?
So thank you. I'm very excited, and Governor Murphy gave his State of the State speech yesterday in which the topic of use of AI, responsible and ethical use of AI, featured very front and center. And I am very proud that we are one of the first states to actually have clear guidance which says we want people to go out and try these things. It's not to say that we won't revise that guidance and we won't upgrade it and we won't change it as we learn better what these tools do and as they evolve, but the fact that we're going out and saying we want people to actually try this to the end of improving how we deliver services to residents. We're coupling, however, that encouragement to try things with broad-scale availability of training. So I lead a partnership of multiple states, including California, called Innovate US, run by public servants for public servants, where we are providing free training in responsible AI and other technology use to government workers. And I might say my co-panelists here have been, or will be soon, speakers who have been helping us to train government workers at no cost to public servants, and I think that's really important. Right now, OPM has a mandate whereby they have to use fee recovery to charge for training that they provide to government workers. We want to ensure that the training we're providing is actually free so that there is no disincentive to using it. But coming back to the policy question, we are telling people go out and try these tools, but ensure that when you're trying them, please do not enter any personally identifiable information. Please fact check anything that comes out of these tools. So we don't want to see those instances like the lawyer who filed the brief that still said in it, written by ChatGPT. So we want to be sure that you're actually fact checking what's coming out of these things in the way that you would if you asked an intern to write something. And we want to also be sure that people are taking advantage of these tools in ways that are actually supplemental to and aiding, as Senator Butler referred to, actually aiding government workers in how they do their work, not supplanting them. So ensuring that we're using AI as an auxiliary to our workers is very important, but again, undergirding all of that is training, 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 and training.
Ms. Pahlka, your book, Recoding America, outlines the disconnect that can occur between policymakers, policy implementers, and the general public. So my question for you is, how can government actually prioritize the customer when it comes to service delivery in the life cycle?
I think this is so critical that we have a fundamental shift in what we value in order to put the customer at the center. And I know this is a very high-level answer, but we have to value delivery as highly as we value policy, both here on the Hill and in the agencies, and to the points earlier, in states and in cities. We are very focused here on the words that we write And we forget that the people on the other end don't look at those words. They go on a website and try to get unemployment insurance. They're trying to get their driver's license, or God forbid, they're in, our criminal legal system and they're experiencing, incredible burdens. They see delivery. And as I said, our human capital system in government broadly, not just in federal government, isn't set up to value that. We're set up to write words and hire contractors. I believe that putting the customer at the center of government is going to involve a pretty high-level shift to thinking about what is it that government actually does, what is our function, and valuing what it looks like to the person at the end of this incredible waterfall hierarchy as much as we do the business of actually writing policy.
Thank you for that, and I'd certainly like to thank all of our witnesses for your time and for being here today, and I'm certainly grateful to your contributions to this important discussion. Delivering services to the American people is a core function for all levels of government. Long lines, slow customer service, complicated applications for federal services hurt the public satisfaction as well as the trust that they have in their government. As I think we've heard very clearly today, artificial intelligence can help make service delivery more efficient, more effective, and accessible. Our witnesses emphasize that strong data infrastructure, a trained workforce, and proper privacy safeguards can ensure that the government is ready for these new AI-powered tools. We also know that developing the right procurement frameworks and recruiting the best talent is going to be needed for wide and successful AI adoption. As chairman of this committee, I will continue to find ways to build a more efficient and more effective government for all Americans. And your testimony today will help inform the committee's future legislative activities, which are forthcoming. And we look forward to your thoughts on that legislation as it's being developed, as well as our oversight actions that we take regularly throughout federal government. The record for this hearing will remain open for 15 days until 5 p.m. on January 25th, 2024 for the submission of statements as well as questions for the record. This hearing is now adjourned.